She offered me $5,000 to forget I saw her in my wife's bed, wearing my wife's robe, with a man who wasn't my son. She thought an old government clerk was weak, easily bought, easily broken. She was about to find out that I don't just file papers. I dismantle lives built on lies. My name is Arthur. For 30 years, I lived a quiet life. I didn't need much, but my son Brian needed everything, and I was willing to give it to him. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not alone in this crazy world, because what happened that cold November afternoon shattered everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and the darkness hiding behind a beautiful smile. The crunch of the tires on the gravel driveway used to be my favorite sound. It meant the city was gone. The noise, the rush, it all faded away. I was back in the mountains, back where Margaret, my late wife, and I had built our sanctuary. But today the sound was too loud. It scraped against the quiet air. It didn't sound like peace. It sounded like something ending, and I had a sick feeling in my gut about why. Beside me, the two rental agents were buzzing. Mark and Sarah, young, polite, very eager. They saw dollar signs where I only saw memories. They couldn't see the ghost of Margaret sitting on the porch swing. They couldn't hear the echo of my son's laughter. "It's absolutely breathtaking, Arthur," Sarah said. She leaned forward, her eyes wide, taking in the tall pines. The isolation, the quiet. This is exactly what high-end clients are looking for. A real escape. I forced a smile. My hands gripped the steering wheel. White knuckles. "It is peaceful," I managed to say. Margaret loved it up here. Saying her name made the knot in my stomach tighten. I was selling it. The words felt foreign, wrong. I had retired 2 years ago after 30 years shuffling papers for the government. I lived a simple life. My pension covered my expenses. I didn't need the money, but my son Brian did. And a father does whatever it takes for his child, doesn't he? Even if it means sacrificing the last piece of the life you loved. Brian and his wife Chloe were starting a new business. A chic little boutique downtown. Chloe insisted it would be the next big thing. They needed capital, a lot of it. Brian had come to me a month ago. I'd never seen him look so stressed. His eyes were tired, his shoulders slumped. He hated asking. He's a proud young man, but he was drowning. "Dad," he had said, his voice rough. He kept rubbing the back of his neck, a nervous habit he's had since he was a boy. "We just need a little push. Once the boutique opens, we'll be fine." Chloe has amazing connections. Chloe, the name tasted like ash in my mouth. I never understood what he saw in her. Or rather, I understood exactly what he saw, but I didn't understand how he missed the emptiness behind it. Chloe was beautiful, polished and sharp. She always looked like she had just stepped out of a magazine. Brian adored her. He thought she was the most brilliant woman in the world. I tried to see her through his eyes. I really did, but there was a coldness beneath her bright smile, a restlessness in her eyes that made me uneasy. It felt like she was always looking past you, looking for something better. And I feared Brian would never be enough. My old friend Maria, Margaret's best friend, had tried to warn me. We were at the wedding reception. Chloe was holding court, dazzling everyone. Maria watched her with a critical eye. "She's lovely, Arthur," Maria had whispered, leaning close. She squeezed my arm, but watch her eyes. They never settle. Be careful with Brian's heart. That girl is a runner. I had dismissed her concerns. I thought she was just being protective. Now her words echoed in the silence of the car. I should have listened. I should have seen the signs. When Brian looked so desperate, I offered the only thing of value I had left, Margaret's cottage. The place we built together, weekend by weekend. Nail by nail, selling it felt like selling a piece of my own history, a betrayal of the life Margaret and I had built. But I did it for Brian. I thought I was saving his future. I didn't realize I was funding its destruction. The drive up the mountain had been torture. Every turn brought back a flood of memories. Margaret laughing as she tried to plant hydrangeas in the rocky soil. Brian, as a boy, catching his first fish. The quiet evenings on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky. I blinked back tears. Focus, Arthur. Focus on the present. But the present was about to become a nightmare. I couldn't wake up from. We should get the measurements of the main living area first, Mark suggested, pulling out a digital tape measure. He was all business. Efficient. He kept clicking his pen, an annoying rhythm that grated on my nerves. I envied his detachment. Of course, I said. I pulled the car to a stop and stepped out. The air was crisp and cold. The mountains were draped in a soft gray mist, mirroring the sadness in my heart. I took a deep breath, trying to find some strength in the familiar scent of pine. As we approached the porch, something felt wrong. It wasn't the cottage itself. The dark wood siding looked the same. The chimney still stood straight, a silent guardian of the memories inside. It was the car, and it didn't belong there. Parked haphazardly near the side entrance was a bright red sports car. Sleek, low to the ground, and aggressively expensive. It looked completely out of place next to the rustic woodpile. A splash of arrogance in the quiet woods. A snake in the garden. "Did you authorize someone to stay here, Arthur?" Sarah asked, frowning slightly. She fidgeted with her scarf, a nervous habit I noticed immediately. She knew I was meticulous about the property. "No," I said. My heart began to beat faster. A cold dread seeped into my bones. Brian and Chloe have a key, but they are supposed to be in the city today, finalizing paperwork. They had lied. The realization hit me hard. Why would they lie about something like that, unless they had something to hide? I climbed the porch steps. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. Maybe Brian just needed a break. Maybe he needed some quiet before the final push. I clung to these possibilities, desperate for them to be true, desperate to avoid the truth that was screaming at me. I pushed the door open. The silence that greeted me was heavy, suffocating, and it carried the faint scent of expensive cologne and something else. Something that made my stomach turn. The living room, usually neat and tidy, a testament to Margaret's love for order, was a disaster. 2 empty wine bottles sat on the coffee table. A man's jacket, tailored and expensive, was thrown carelessly over Margaret's favorite armchair, the one she used to sit in while knitting, her herders clicking softly in the quiet evening. My stomach twisted. This wasn't Brian. Brian was neat, respectful. He loved this place, almost as much as I did. A pair of high heels, glittering and sharp, lay near the fireplace. They were definitely not Margaret's style. They were Chloe's style. I recognized them from a recent dinner. She had bragged about how much they cost. "Arthur," Mark called from the doorway. Hesitant. He sensed the tension, the violation of the space. I held up a hand, signaling them to wait. The cold dread solidified into certainty. A terrible knowledge settled in the pit of my stomach. I knew what I was about to find, and it terrified me. I walked slowly down the short hallway toward the master bedroom. The floorboards creaked under my weight. Each sound echoed the fracturing of my world. The door was slightly ajar. I could hear faint music, a soft, sultry jazz tune. The kind Chloe loved, the kind Brian hated. I took a deep breath, and I pushed the door open. The sight hit me like a physical blow. It stole the breath from my lungs. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I could only stare at the scene unfolding before me. There, lounging on the bed I had shared with Margaret for 20 years, the bed where we had whispered secrets and shared dreams, was my daughter-in-law, Chloe. She wasn't alone. The silence of the room felt heavy, broken only by the soft jazz music and their intimate laughter. Beside her, looking relaxed and comfortable, as if he belonged there, was a man I had never seen before. Young, fit, and clearly not my son. But the worst part, the detail that twisted the knife in my gut, was what Chloe was wearing. It was Margaret's silk robe, the deep blue one. I had bought her for our 20th anniversary, the one I kept wrapped in tissue paper in the cedar chest at the foot of the bed. It was draped loosely around her, a mockery of the love it represented, a desecration, my vision blurred with rage. My ears rang. For a second I forgot how to breathe. This wasn't just betrayal. It was an execution of everything I held sacred. Margaret's memory, my son's love, my own sacrifice. All reduced to this sordid scene. They looked up, startled, The man scrambled to cover himself, his arrogance dissolving into panic. But Chloe just stared at me. Her eyes were wide for only a moment. Then they narrowed, cold, calculating. She didn't look ashamed. She looked annoyed, as if I had interrupted an important meeting. "Arthur," she said. Her voice was surprisingly steady, devoid of any emotion. "You're early." The sheer audacity paralyzed me. I looked at the man. He was now trying to pull on his pants while hiding behind the bedroom door. A pathetic sight. I looked back at Chloe, sitting in my wife's bed, wearing my wife's robe. The rage that filled me was cold, sharp, and terrifying. It demanded action. "Get out," I said. My voice was low and shaking, vibrating with a rage I hadn't known I possessed. I was talking to the man. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed his shoes and bolted past me. Out the front door. He left behind the scent of expensive cologne and deceit. He didn't even look back. A coward. I heard his sports car roar to life. The engine screamed as he tore down the driveway. The sound of his escape, a discordant note in the quiet mountain air. Before the car disappeared around the bend, I quickly pulled out my phone and snapped a picture. The license plate, clear as day. His name might be unknown, but his car was now evidence, and I was going to find out who he was. Chloe didn't move. She simply pulled the robe tighter around herself and stood up. She walked toward the window, looking out at the trees as if she owned the place, which, I suppose, she thought she soon would. "Well, that was awkward," she said, lighting a cigarette. I noticed her hand was steady. No tremor, no fear. She was ice cold. She never smoked around Brian. Another secret, another lie. The smoke coiled around her like a snake. "How could you?" I whispered. The words felt inadequate, small against the enormity of her betrayal. "Here, in this place, in Margaret's robe?" My voice cracked. The pain was raw, exposed. I felt the weight of my sacrifice crushing me. She turned around, blowing a stream of smoke toward the ceiling. The gray cloud hung in the air like a shroud. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Arthur," she scoffed. "It's just a house, a pile of wood and stone." She gestured with the cigarette. "And the robe? It's just a piece of cloth. Sentimental value doesn't pay the bills." Her eyes met mine, cold and hard, no remorse, no regret, just a chilling emptiness that terrified me more than her anger. "And Brian," she continued, her voice dripping with contempt. "Brian is sweet, but he's boring. He lacks ambition. He lacks the fire that I need." The words hit me like slaps across the face. My son, my kind, loving son, reduced to a footnote in her selfish narrative. She spoke of him as if he were a piece of furniture she was tired of. "He is your husband. He is my son. He loves you." My voice rose, fueled by anger. "I am selling this cottage for you, for your business. I am giving up everything for you." Chloe laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound that grated on my nerves. "The boutique?" "Please," she said, rolling her eyes. "That's just a distraction. A little project to keep Brian busy while I focus on the real game." The real game. What did that even mean? I had a terrible feeling. I was about to find out. She walked over to the dresser, rummaged through her expensive handbag, the one Brian had saved for months to buy her for her birthday. "Look, Arthur," she said, her tone shifting, smooth, manipulative. "I know this looks bad, but it doesn't have to be a problem. We can manage this. We can control the narrative." She pulled out a checkbook. She wasn't ashamed. She was negotiating, and that was the moment I knew she was truly dangerous. She scribbled something down. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was deafening in the silent room. She ripped the check out and held it out to me. Her eyes met mine, cold, calculating. A smirk played on her lips. She thought she could buy me. She thought my integrity had a price. She thought I was as cheap as she was. "Let's keep this between us," she said, her voice smooth as silk, laced with poison. $5,000, a little bonus from the sale. Think of it as a finder's fee for your silence. $5,000, the price she put on my son's heart, the price she put on my loyalty. I stared at the check. The numbers blurred. My hand trembled, not with greed, but with revulsion. This piece of paper represented everything that was wrong with her, everything that was destroying my son. The insult was so profound it almost paralyzed me. She paused, letting the amount hang in the air. "No need to upset Brian," she continued, her voice softening, feigning concern. "He's already stressed enough. We don't want to jeopardize the business, do we? This sale means everything to him." She was using my love for my son against me, blackmailing me with his happiness. It was a cruel, calculated move, and it showed me exactly who I was dealing with. I looked at her face. Beautiful, in a harsh, expensive way. Brian was blinded by her, deaf to the warnings that echoed in my heart. I had to make a choice, and it was the most important choice of my life. I nodded slowly. I reached out and took the check. The paper felt slick and repulsive in my hand. Chloe smiled, a triumphant little smirk. She thought she had won. She thought I was just a weak old man, easily bought, easily silenced. She had underestimated me. She had no idea the war she had just started. "Good," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I knew you'd be reasonable, Arthur. It's the smart move. For everyone." She dismissed me with a wave of her hand. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to shower. The water pressure here is dreadful, but it will have to do. Tell the agents we can reschedule. I need to get back to the city." I turned and walked out of the bedroom. I folded the check carefully and put it in my pocket. It wasn't money, it was evidence. Mark and Sarah were hovering near the front door, their faces pale with second-hand embarrassment. They had heard the shouting. They had seen the man flee. They were witnesses. Sarah, especially, looked horrified. She kept fidgeting with her scarf, avoiding eye contact. She knew what she saw was wrong. "Arthur, is everything all right?" she asked timidly, her voice trembling. "The viewing is cancelled," I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears, as if someone else was speaking. "A family emergency has come up. I apologize for wasting your time. I will compensate you for your trouble." They nodded quickly, eager to escape the tension that crackled in the air. They hurried back to their car. I waited until they were gone, until the sound of their engine faded into the distance, until the silence of the mountains returned. Before I left, while Chloe was in the shower, the water running, I walked back into the living room. I took out my phone again. I needed more than just the license plate. I took pictures. The messy room, the wine bottles, the man's jacket on Margaret's chair, the high heels near the fireplace. More evidence. I documented the scene like I used to document evidence files back in my clerk days. Meticulous. Precise, and then I walked back to my car. I sat behind the wheel, my hands gripped the steering wheel. The silence of the mountains, usually so comforting, felt oppressive now. It felt judgmental. The urge to call Brian was overwhelming. To scream the truth, to shatter his illusion, to protect him from the poison that was slowly destroying his life. But I stopped myself. I knew my son, and I knew my enemy. Brian was kind, trusting. He loved Chloe with a devotion that was painful to watch. If I told him now, in the heat of the moment, he wouldn't believe me. He would want to believe Chloe's lies. She would twist it. She would cry, manipulate him, accuse me of making it up, of being jealous, of trying to sabotage their happiness. It would be messy, painful, and she might still win. She was a master manipulator, a puppeteer pulling the strings of our lives. No, this required something more than anger. It required precision, a strategy that would dismantle her world, piece by piece, leaving her with nothing but the ruins of her own deceit. I needed help. I needed someone who understood Chloe's world, someone who knew how to play the game, someone who was as ruthless as she was. If this story has your heart racing, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Every click helps us keep uncovering stories that deserve to be heard. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed an ally, a powerful one. I pulled out my phone. I scrolled past Brian's name. The sight of it caused a sharp pang of guilt. But I kept scrolling. I made one phone call, not to my son, but to the one person who could truly destroy her, the one person who held the keys to her kingdom, The one person she feared. The phone rang 3 times. I waited, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hello?" A gruff, powerful voice answered. A voice accustomed to command, to authority. "Hello, Mr. Davis," I said, my voice steady now, cold as the mountain air. "This is Arthur, Brian's father. We need to talk about your daughter Chloe." Robert Davis, a man I had met only a handful of times. A real estate tycoon, a shark in a world of minnows, wealthy beyond measure and terrifyingly imposing. He had never approved of Chloe marrying Brian. He thought my son, the son of a government clerk, was beneath her, a stain on the pristine tapestry of their privileged lives. But more than that, Robert Davis valued control and reputation above all else. He despised scandal, he abhorred weakness, and Chloe was about to become a massive liability. "Arthur," Mr. Davis said, his voice laced with impatience. I heard the familiar tap-tap-tap of his ring on something hard, a nervous tick of the powerful. "What is this about?" "If it's about that ridiculous boutique loan, I told Chloe I wouldn't finance her little hobby." So he already knew about the money troubles. He already knew she was reckless. That was good. It meant he wouldn't be blinded by paternal love. "It's not about the loan, Robert." I cut him off, my voice sharp. Surprised by my own boldness, I am at my mountain cottage. I just found Chloe here. I paused, letting the words hang in the air, waiting for the impact. With another man. Silence. Long, heavy. I could almost hear the gears turning in his mind. The calculations. The risk assessment. The damage control. "Are you certain?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. A rumble of thunder before the storm. "I have proof," I said, feeling the weight of the check in my pocket. She tried to buy my silence for $5,000. Another pause, colder this time. I heard him sigh, a sharp sound of disgust. $5,000? She always was cheap. A strange thing to say about his own daughter, but it confirmed what I suspected. He knew exactly who Chloe was, and he didn't like her very much either. "I also have witnesses," I added, pressing my advantage. "2 rental agents who saw the man, saw Chloe, and I have a picture of his car. The license plate." "Stay there," Robert commanded. "I'll handle this. I'll send my driver." "No," I said firmly. "I'm not staying here. She is still in the house. I will not be in the same space as her." I took a deep breath. I was taking control now. "I will meet you in the city, at your office. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I hung up before he could argue. I started the car and drove away, leaving the cottage and Chloe behind. I didn't look back. As I drove down the winding mountain road, the scenery blurred before my eyes. My phone rang. It was Brian. My heart leaped into my throat. I took a deep breath and answered. I had to maintain the facade. "Just a little longer." "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice cheerful, oblivious to the storm that was about to break over his head. "How did the viewing go? Did the agents love it? Are we going to get an offer?" My heart ached. The innocence in his voice was a stark contrast to the darkness I had witnessed. "Hey, Brian," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We had to cancel." "Cancel? Why? Is something wrong?" The disappointment in his voice was palpable. "A small issue with the plumbing," I lied. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. "Nothing major, but I need to get it fixed before we can show it." "Oh, okay," Brian said, sounding crestfallen. "Well, let me know when it's fixed. We are really counting on that capital. The boutique opening is just around the corner, and we still have so much to do. Chloe is stressing out." "Stressing out?" I almost laughed. The irony was almost too much to bear. "I know, son. I know," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Don't worry. Everything will work out." I hung up. The weight of the secret pressed down on me, suffocating me. Lying to Brian felt terrible, but necessary. I had to protect him. Even if it meant hurting him first. The surgery always hurts before the healing begins. The next morning, I arrived at the Davis Tower downtown, a massive structure of glass and steel, a monument to Robert Davis's ego. It towered over the city like a modern-day fortress. I felt small and shabby in my sensible coat and old shoes, As I walked through the opulent lobby, the marble floors reflected the cold, artificial light. People rushed around me, important people, expensive suits. I was an outsider in this world. I was ushered into Robert's office on the top floor, a sprawling space, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. He was standing by the window, his back to me, a silhouette against the bright morning sun. He turned to face me, tall, impeccably dressed. His face was stern, his eyes sharp and intelligent. He didn't look like a grieving father. He looked like a general preparing for battle. "Arthur," he said, his voice devoid of any warmth. He didn't offer me a seat. "I hope, for your sake, that this is not some misunderstanding. I do not appreciate having my time wasted." "It isn't," I said, remaining standing. I pulled out the check and placed it on his massive mahogany desk. The slip of paper looked insignificant in the opulent surroundings. "This is what she gave me." Robert picked up the check, his eyes narrowing as he recognized his daughter's flamboyant signature. He examined it for a long moment, his expression darkening. "She thought she could buy my silence," I said, my voice steady. "She was wrong," Robert said, tossing the check back onto the desk with disgust. But there was something else in his voice. Not just anger at Chloe, but a cold satisfaction. As if I had just handed him a weapon he'd been waiting for, a justification for what he was about to do. "I also took pictures," I said. I handed him my phone. He scrolled through the images, the messy living room, the wine bottles, the clothes strewn about. His expression hardened with each one. He showed no emotion, but his jaw clenched. Then he stopped at the picture of the red sports car. The license plate. "Who is the man?" he asked, his voice cold and detached. "I don't know his name, but you have the license plate." Robert nodded slowly. He picked up his desk phone and dialed a number. He didn't wait for an answer. "Henderson," he said, his voice sharp. "I need you in my office. Now." He hung up. The hunt had begun, and I had a front row seat. A moment later, a man walked in. Sharp suit, cold eyes. He carried a thin leather folio. This was Mr. Henderson, Robert's fixer, the man who cleaned up the messes. He stood ramrod straight, his posture impeccable, his presence radiating silent authority. "Run this plate," Robert commanded, pointing to the screen of my phone. "I want a name, an address, and a full background check." "Yesterday," Henderson nodded curtly, took a photo of the plate with his own device, and walked out. No questions asked. The efficiency was terrifying. It showed the reach of Robert's power. Robert walked back to his desk and sat down. He motioned for me to sit. I did. He stared at me, his eyes boring into me, searching for any sign of weakness, of deceit. "Why come to me, Arthur?" he asked, his tone curious. "Why not just tell your son? This is a domestic matter." "Because Brian loves her," I said, my voice thick with emotion. The pain of my son's impending heartbreak washed over me. He would try to forgive her. He would try to fix what is broken. I paused, gathering my thoughts. "But Chloe is not broken, Mr. Davis. She is empty. She would manipulate him, destroy him, and then discard him, when he is no longer useful. I refuse to let that happen." "And you think I can stop her?" Robert asked, a hint of skepticism in his voice. "Chloe is headstrong. She always has been." "I think you have the power to do what I cannot," I said, meeting his gaze directly. "I think you have the leverage to neutralize the threat she poses to my son." I was gambling, betting that his pride was stronger than his love for his daughter. Robert leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You understand, Arthur, that if this becomes public, it will be a scandal. My reputation, the reputation of the Davis name, will be tarnished. I have spent a lifetime building this empire. I will not let it be destroyed by my daughter's reckless behavior." "I don't care about your reputation, Robert," I said, my voice rising, fueled by a sudden surge of anger. "I care about my son. He is the only family I have left. I will do whatever it takes to protect him." We sat in silence. The tension in the room was palpable, a standoff between two fathers, one driven by love, the other by power. Finally, Robert sighed. It was a heavy, weary sound. Chloe has always been difficult, he said, choosing his words carefully. She believes she is entitled to everything without working for anything. She believes the rules do not apply to her. Then came the twist I hadn't expected. The revelation that changed everything. You are aware of her trust fund? Robert asked, his voice low. I nodded. I knew she had money, safety net that allowed her to live a life of luxury. What you may not know, Robert continued, his eyes hardening, is that the trust fund has very specific conditions. Morality clauses, conditions that I insisted upon, knowing my daughter's predisposition for reckless behavior. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick legal document. He flipped through the pages, then pointed to a specific paragraph. The paper was thick, expensive, the language cold and unforgiving. If Chloe engages in behavior that brings disgrace to the family name, infidelity, drug use, criminal activity, she forfeits everything. The entire fund reverts to charity. I stared at him, stunned. This was the leverage. This was the weapon I needed. This was why Chloe was so desperate to keep her lifestyle hidden. Not just from Brian, but from her father. She wasn't afraid of losing Brian. She was afraid of losing the money. That boutique she's starting with Brian, I said, realization dawning. The pieces of the puzzle were clicking into place. Chloe's words echoed in my mind. A distraction. The real game. It's not a real business, is it? Robert shook his head, a grim smile playing on his lips. It's a front, a way for her to funnel money out of her accounts before I caught on to her reckless spending. She's been draining her resources, convinced she could charm her way out of any trouble. He leaned forward, his voice cold. She thought she could outsmart me. She was wrong. The depth of her deception was staggering. She wasn't just cheating on Brian. She was using him. She was using me, using everyone around her to maintain the facade of her perfect life. And I almost helped her do it by selling the cottage. The money wouldn't have saved their business. It would have funded her next scheme. The door opened. Henderson returned. He handed Robert the folio. He didn't look at me. I was invisible to him. The car is registered to Jason Miller, Henderson said, his voice monotone. A personal trainer at an exclusive gym, known history of associating with wealthy, married women. Significant debt. A parasite. Feeding off the weak and the wealthy. Robert nodded, satisfied. Good work, Henderson. Now dig into the boutique's financials. I want to see where every penny is going. I want to know what her real game is. Henderson nodded and left again. The wheels of justice, or perhaps revenge, were turning, and they were moving fast. So, what now? I asked, my voice filled with a renewed sense of purpose. Now, Robert said, his eyes gleaming with a cold, predatory light, we confront her, but we do it strategically. We need Brian there. He needs to see who she truly is. He needs to hear the truth from her own mouth. He paused, his expression grim. We need to break the spell she has cast upon him. Over the next few days, the tension was almost unbearable. I felt like I was walking a tightrope, balancing between the truth and the lies, waiting for the inevitable fall. Chloe started calling me incessantly. I didn't answer. My phone buzzed with her texts, a constant reminder of the darkness lurking beneath the surface of our lives. Her messages started with pleading. Arthur, please, we need to talk. It was a mistake. I loved Brian, I scoffed. A mistake, as if cheating on your husband in your dead mother-in-law's bed was a simple error in judgment. The lies came so easily to her. Then the messages shifted to demands. Why haven't you cashed the check, Arthur? We had a deal. Don't be a fool. The mask was slipping. She still thought she was in control. She still thought she could manipulate me. And finally, the threats. The desperate scramble of a cornered animal. If you tell Brian, I will deny everything. I will tell him you are losing your mind. It's illusional, grieving, obsessed with me. I will destroy you. I will take everything you have. Her words were venomous, designed to instill fear, to paralyze me, but they didn't scare me. They fueled me. They confirmed that I was doing the right thing. I saved every message, every threat, every desperate attempt to control the narrative. I forwarded them all to Robert. Evidence. Ammunition. Meanwhile, Robert's team worked relentlessly. Henderson was digging deep. The investigation was expanding. But then, something unexpected happened. I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I answered cautiously. "Hello, Arthur?" It was a woman's voice. Nervous, shaking. "Yes. Who is this?" "It's Sarah, the rental agent. From the cottage." Her voice trembled. "I need to talk to you. In person. It's important, and I'm scared." We met at a small coffee shop downtown. Sarah looked pale, exhausted. She kept looking over her shoulder, as if expecting someone to jump out at her. She still fidgeted with her scarf. "What is it, Sarah?" I asked, concerned. I felt responsible for dragging her into this mess. "Chloe called me," she whispered, leaning across the table. "She threatened me, told me if I said anything about what I saw at the cottage, she would ruin my career. She said her father is a powerful man, that she could have my license revoked." I felt a surge of anger. Chloe's trying to cover her tracks, trying to eliminate the witnesses, trying to bully everyone into silence. "She's desperate," I said, trying to reassure her. I placed my hand over hers. "Don't worry, Sarah. I won't let her hurt you. Her father knows the truth. He is on our side." "He is?" Sarah looked relieved. The fear in her eyes lessened slightly. "Yes, but we need your help." "I'm scared, Arthur," she admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. "But I can't lie. What she did, it was wrong. I'm willing to testify. If it comes to that, I have a recording of her threat." A recording. Chloe was getting sloppy. Her arrogance was making her careless. I nodded, grateful for her courage. Another nail in Chloe's coffin. Brian called me every day. He was increasingly anxious the cottage sale, the boutique opening. His voice was tight with stress. He was fraying at the edges. "Dad, the investors are getting impatient," he said, his voice strained. "When will the plumbing be fixed? We need the money. Chloe says if we don't get the capital soon, the whole thing might fall apart." He was starting to panic, and Chloe was fueling that panic, turning the screws on him. "Soon, son," I kept saying, the lie heavy on my tongue. "Just a little longer, everything will be all right." I felt a constant ache in my chest. Guilt and fear. Guilt and fear. I was orchestrating the destruction of my son's life, even as I was trying to save him. It was a terrible burden to bear. I just hoped he would understand someday. A few days later, Henderson called Robert. I was in the office when the call came through. Robert put it on speaker. The final piece of the puzzle was about to fall into place. "We have the financials, sir," Henderson reported. His voice was cold, clinical. "It's worse than we thought. The boutique is a shell corporation. The capital investments have been redirected to offshore accounts. The real game, it was finally clear. She was planning to disappear," Henderson continued. "She has a plane ticket booked for the Cayman Islands. For next week, Jason Miller has a ticket on the same flight. She was going to take the money and run, leaving Brian with nothing but debt and heartbreak, leaving me with the ashes of my sacrifice. The betrayal was complete, and it was time to end it. Finally, Robert arranged the meeting. The stage was set. He told Chloe it was an emergency discussion about the trust fund, a topic he knew would lure her into the trap. He told Brian it was about the financing for the boutique, and that he wanted me there as a mediator between the two families. The day of the confrontation arrived. I felt sick to my stomach. A knot of anxiety tightened in my gut. I knew this day would shatter my son's world, and I was the one swinging the hammer. We met back at the Davis Tower, in the same imposing office. The city skyline was a silent witness to the unfolding drama. Brian arrived first, nervous but earnest, clinging to the hope that his dreams were about to come true. He paced the floor, checking his phone constantly. "Dad," he whispered me, his eyes shining with anticipation, "I think Mr. Davis is finally coming around to the boutique idea. Chloe said he was impressed with our business plan. This could be it." I just hugged him tightly. I held him close, breathing in the scent of his innocence. The scent of the son I loved more than life itself. I wanted to protect him from the pain that was coming, but I knew I couldn't. Whatever happens, Brian, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion, remember that I love you. Remember that I will always be here for you. He looked confused, a shadow of doubt crossing his face. He sensed something was wrong, but before he could ask, Chloe swept into the room, a whirlwind of expensive perfume and designer clothes, a sharp white suit, her hair pulled back severely, powerful, confident, in control. But when she saw me sitting next to her father, her eyes widened in shock. The mask slipped, fear beneath the surface, and then she saw Henderson standing silently in the corner, holding the file. Her eyes narrowed. She knew something was wrong. She knew she was trapped. "Arthur, what are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice sharp, accusatory. She glanced at Henderson. "And who is this?" "He is at my request," Robert said, his voice cold and commanding. He dominated the room. "And this is Mr. Henderson, my head of security and legal counsel. Sit down, Chloe. We have important matters to discuss." She sat, her posture rigid. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape route, a way out of the trap that was closing around her. But there was no escape. "This meeting is about your future, Chloe," Robert began, his voice devoid of any emotion. A judge delivering a sentence about the truth. Chloe laughed nervously, a brittle sound that echoed in the silent room. "The truth? Father, what are you talking about? Is this about the spending reports? I can explain. The accountant made a mistake. It's about this," Robert said. He pressed a button on his desk. A large screen on the wall came to life. It displayed the picture of the red sports car parked outside my cottage, the bright color a stark contrast to the rustic surroundings. Chloe went pale. Her breath caught in her throat. Brian stared at the screen, confused. "Hey, that's Dad's cottage. What's that car? Did you get a new car, Chloe?" His innocence twisted the knife in my heart. "That car belongs to a man named Jason Miller," Robert said, his voice booming, filling the room with the weight of his words. "A man your wife was entertaining last week. A man she has been seeing for the past 6 months. What?" Brian looked at Chloe, then at me. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to pain. "Dad? What is he talking about? Chloe, tell him he's wrong." Chloe recovered quickly. "The performance of a lifetime. This is ridiculous," she cried, turning to me, her eyes filled with manufactured outrage. "Arthur, how could you do this to me? How could you lie like this?" She turned to Brian, her eyes wide and pleading. Tears welled up, the victim playing her part. "Brian, darling, your father is confused," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He's been under a lot of stress since your mother died."
"He's grieving. He's imagining things."
She reached out and touched his arm. "He never liked me. He's trying to break us apart." Brian looked torn. His heart was warring at his mind. He wanted to believe her. I could see it in his eyes, the desperate need to cling to the illusion of their perfect life. I had to act fast, before she could sink her claws into him again. "She offered me money to keep silent," I said quietly, looking directly at Brian. My voice steady, unwavering. "He's lying," Chloe shrieked, standing up. Her composure was cracking, the facade crumbling. "He hates me. He's always hated me. He's a bitter old man who can't stand to see us happy. Is he also lying about this?" Robert said. He placed the uncashed check on the table. The $5,000 a silent testament to her guilt. Chloe froze, her eyes fixed on the check. The evidence of her betrayal laid bare for everyone to see. "And what about these?" Robert continued. He held up a folder filled with printouts of her threatening targets to me. He started reading them aloud, his voice devoid of any emotion. The words hung in the air like poisonous darts. The threats, the manipulation, the casual cruelty. "We also have a sworn statement from Sarah Jenkins," Henderson added, stepping forward. His voice smooth and clinical, "the rental agent who witnessed the scene at the cottage, and we have a recording of your attempts to intimidate her into silence." He pressed play on a small digital recorder. Chloe's voice filled the room, sharp, threatening. I will ruin your career. My father is a powerful man. Chloe's eyes darted to the door, trapped, defeated. With every piece of evidence, I watched the light fade from Brian's eyes. The confusion turned to realization, then to devastation. Chloe? He whispered, his voice breaking. The sound of his heart breaking echoed in the silent room. Is it true? But Robert wasn't finished. The final blow was yet to come. And then there is the matter of the boutique. He nodded to Henderson. Henderson placed a financial report on the table. The boutique is a shell corporation, Robert announced, his voice cold as ice. The capital investments, the money Arthur was going to provide, it was all being funneled to offshore accounts. She was planning to leave you, Brian. Henderson slid a printout across the table. She has a plane ticket to the Cayman Islands for next week. Jason Miller is on the same flight. Brian looked at the report. The ticket confirmation, the offshore accounts. The betrayal hit him with the force of a physical blow, shattering his world. He looked at Chloe, not with anger, but with a profound, soul-crushing sadness. You were going to leave me? After everything? Chloe looked around the room like a trapped animal. She saw no sympathy in her father's eyes, only cold judgment. She saw the truth in mine, and she saw the heartbreak in Brian's. Her mask finally shattered, revealing the ugliness beneath the surface. Yes, it's true, she screamed. Her voice was filled with rage and contempt, the venom finally spewing out. I was leaving. You think I wanted this pathetic life? Are you happy now? You think you're so smart? Brian, you are weak. You are pathetic. You are nothing. The words hit Brian like slaps across the face. He flinched, but he didn't look away. He finally saw her, the real Chloe. I used you, she continued, her voice rising in hysteria. I used your pathetic father and his stupid cottage. I used everyone to get what I wanted, and I almost had it. She turned to her father, her eyes blazing with defiance. And you think you can control me with your money? You think you can dictate how I live my life? I'd rather have nothing than be under your thumb. I am free. Then you shall have your wish, Robert said, his voice calm, final. As of this moment, your trust fund is dissolved. The morality clause has been invoked. Your accounts are frozen. Your assets are seized. He paused, letting the words sink in. You are no longer a Davis. You are no longer welcome in this building or in my home. You are on your own. Chloe stared at him, stunned into silence. The reality of her situation finally hit her. All her money, her status, her power, gone in an instant. The empire she had built on lies and deceit crumbled into dust. She looked at me, her eyes burning with hatred. You did this, she hissed. You did this to yourself, Chloe, I said quietly. She grabbed her handbag, the designer label a mockery of her newfound poverty, and stormed out of the room. She slammed the door behind her. The sound echoed the finality of her downfall. Brian didn't move. He just sat there, staring at the table. Tears streamed down his face. The silent sobs racked his body. The shock was too much. He looked broken. I went to him and put my arms around him. I held him while he cried, shielding him from the wreckage of his life. I felt his pain as if it were my own. Robert Davis watched us, his expression unreadable. After a moment, he stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. He didn't say a word. The silence in the room was heavy with grief. The war was over, but the casualties remained. The aftermath was messy and painful. Brian filed for divorce the next day. Chloe tried to contest it. She tried to fight for a piece of the life she had destroyed. But without her father's financial backing, and with a mountain of evidence against her, her lawyers quickly abandoned her. The divorce was finalized within months, a swift and silent execution of their marriage. The boutique venture collapsed. Of course. The dream turned into a nightmare. Brian was devastated, not by the loss of the business, but by the loss of the woman he thought he loved, the future he thought he had, the realization that his life had been built on a lie. He moved in with me for a while. He sought refuge in the familiarity of his childhood home. The house was filled with a heavy silence. We didn't talk much at first. We didn't need to. We just existed, side by side, trying to piece together the fragments of our broken lives. The healing process was slow. There were days when Brian couldn't get out of bed, days when the grief overwhelmed him. The darkness threatened to consume him. I sat with him, listening to him talk about Chloe, about the memories, the hopes, the dreams that had turned to ash. Maria, Margaret's friend, came by often. She brought food, comfort, a listening ear. She helped Brian navigate the darkness. She helped me too. She reminded me that we were not alone. Margaret would be so proud of you, Arthur, she told me one evening, her eyes filled with kindness. You protected your son. You fought for him when he couldn't fight for himself. Her words were a balm to my wounded soul. We spent many nights talking, healing, rebuilding the trust that had been broken. It was during one of those late-night conversations that Brian finally asked the question that had been haunting him. Why didn't you tell me, Dad? He asked, his voice raw with emotion. When you found them at the cottage, why did you call her father instead of me? I looked at my son. His face was pale, his eyes red from crying. I knew I owed him the truth. Because I knew she would manipulate you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. She would have lied and twisted everything, and you would have believed her. You loved her so much, Brian. You would have tried to forgive her. I paused, remembering the cold calculation in Chloe's eyes. She would have destroyed you, son. She would have taken everything from you and left you with nothing. I couldn't let that happen. I had to make sure she couldn't hurt you anymore. I had to be strong for both of us. Brian nodded slowly. Understanding dawned on his face, the weight of the betrayal finally settling. She would have, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. She always knew how to make me feel guilty, how to make me believe I was the one who was wrong. He leaned against me, and for the first time since he was a little boy, my son cried in my arms. I held him tightly, my own tears falling silently. It was a painful, necessary cleansing, the bond between father and son, tested by betrayal, strengthened by shared grief. I took the mountain cottage off the market. I couldn't sell it now. It held too many memories, both good and bad. It was a symbol of what we had almost lost, and what we had fought to protect. It was still our sanctuary. A year passed. The colors returned to the world. Brian started healing. He started a new job, something he was passionate about, not just something to pay the bills. He looked lighter, happier. The scars remained, but the healing had begun. He was rebuilding his life, on his own terms. He even started dating again. A kind, gentle woman named Emily. She was a teacher, grounded and honest. She loved him for who he was, not for what he could provide. She was the opposite of Chloe in every way. She brought light back into his eyes, laughter back into his life. I saw the genuine happiness in his eyes, the peace that had settled in his heart, and I knew we had made it through the storm. One crisp autumn afternoon, I drove up to the cottage alone. The air was filled with the scent of pine needles and wood smoke. The familiar aroma welcomed me home. I walked into the master bedroom. It looked the same, but it felt different. The darkness that Chloe had brought into the space was gone, replaced by the lingering presence of Margaret's love. I opened the cedar chest at the foot of the bed. There, wrapped in tissue paper, was Margaret's silk robe. After the confrontation, I had reclaimed it. I had it professionally cleaned, washing away the stain of Chloe's betrayal. I took the robe out and walked onto the porch. I sat in the old rocking chair, the robe draped over my lap. The silk felt soft and comforting against my skin. I watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. I thought about Chloe. I heard she had moved away, struggling to maintain the lifestyle she believed she was entitled to, a ghost haunting the fringes of the world she once ruled. I felt no pity for her. She had made her choices. She had reaped what she had sown. I thought about Robert Davis. We hadn't spoken much since the divorce. A silent understanding passed between us. He had sent me a brief note, a simple card that said, "Thank you for protecting our family's honor." A strange alliance forged in the fire of betrayal, but an effective one. We were two fathers who had done what was necessary. But mostly I thought about Margaret. I missed her terribly. The ache in my heart was a constant companion, but I knew she would be proud of me. I had protected our son, I defended our home. I had upheld the values she cherished. The value of family isn't measured in dollars, or cottages, or trust funds. It's measured in loyalty, sacrifice, and the courage to fight for those you love. It's measured in the quiet moments of connection, the shared memories, the unwavering support that binds us together. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the porch, I closed my eyes. A single tear traced a path down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness, but of peace. We had survived. We were whole again. The silence of the mountains embraced me, a comforting presence in the twilight. I was home. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot because your time matters.